The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to the Broadcasters Podcast. Thanks for being with me. This is KOP here with you. I will say this before we get started. The Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth II, passing away at the age of 96. For those people in the UK, in Great Britain, Scotland, Ireland, and any areas where you listen to this program, you might be catching the show. I give to those countries and to that entire region, I give my condolences and prayers. To the fact that if you felt that Queen Elizabeth was very important to you, really as a beacon of nobility, of freedom, and just of grace. When I saw that, I know I was saying to myself, well, that means BBC is going to be kind of staying in a state of mourning for the next 10 days. God save the king. And I will say that and leave that there. Now, let's move along into the program tonight. And this is a topic I've been thinking about talking about here for a while. It's something that I've been wanting to bring up for a while, and just a number of stories came up that gave me the opportunity to go and bring this in, because we're going to go pretty in depth. There are obviously people that are on YouTube or on Twitch live streaming that are with great large followings, and they're media moguls in their own right in the media counterculture. But they're also finding their way into crossing over into the mainstream. And a number of the people we're going to talk about are definitely that. And they are stars in their own right, as much as any Hollywood star would be. But we don't talk about them that much. And so there's a number of names I'm going to bring up on the show that will stand out for the most part here. And before I get into this, I want to make sure to be clear about this. This program is apolitical. The names I'm going to be bringing up on this show might rile up some political feelings and thoughts that you might have. It doesn't matter to me about those. This is a discussion overall of looking at the media landscape through the eyes and through the voices of these people that are very influential, controversial, and some of them, or actually all of them, have had some point where they have been at the brink of being censored and canceled. And it's a fascinating case study into what the media is right now and how social media really directs where things go, where all these stars are intertwined, because they can be clipped up. They can be, their voices, their words, their messages can be misconstrued. They can be doing things for publicity stunts that can go wrong and go awry. Things like that. And then there are many other people underneath this tier of people that I'm going to bring up here tonight. I'm going to bring up 4 names specifically. There might be others in the conversation within the stories I'm going to bring up to support my case. The 4 names I'm looking at, the first one is really going to go ahead and get people with one opinion or another. It's a very, what's the best word I'm looking for? It's going to give you one response or the other. I'm talking about Andrew Tate. I'm talking about KSI, the rapper and YouTuber. I'm talking about Logan Paul. We can also include Jake Paul, the Paul brothers, and Joe Rogan. Those are some of the best names to give out here in general that really fit of what we can talk about. Now, what this comes from is a story that Fred Jacobs, the radio consultant extraordinaire, put out a story tonight that really helped me out to explain things. And I'm really glad that he put the story out, because this is something I wanted to talk about for a while. And this story just came out today as I record this, September 8th, 2022. And I really appreciate that he actually put this out. Video helped the podcasting star. I want to take this story and run into it because there's a lot right here that really says everything about the impact that all these video podcasters, for the most part, as I've said before on previous episodes of the program, I talked about it 2 weeks ago on the program. This is episode 243. So episode 241, and I titled it, How Podcasting Has Leveled the Media Playing Field. I specifically talked about all the podcasting model and what was being done. So this is a continuation from it, because now we're going to talk about the names within. So I would also just recommend, if you want to kind of do the part 1, part 2, go back and listen to my episode from August 26th, How Podcasting Has Leveled the Media Playing Field. That's one. And then basically Fred Jacobs really just kind of summarized everything into a nice story that I haven't had a chance to go and run through all of it, but I know where he's going with it. Okay. Video podcasts. Now we know that the radio team out there, they really didn't have a good idea with it before when radio was just getting started. Because remember, the person that really is responsible for video podcasts, for the model that we follow today, the originator of how we look at YouTube and how we look at radio and podcasting now, is Howard Stern. The E! Show is still one of the best examples there is. When everybody looked on how that show was done, the casualness of the set, the fact they didn't do a traditional radio studio, even though we see a radio studio now today, because we have Dish Nation, which is another show that has been on since 2011, as a matter of fact. And what they do is they're basically taking clips from the video portions of morning shows on radio stations around the country. So originally it was Kid Craddock, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, at KHKS in Dallas on a major top 40 radio station there. Then you have the Ricky Smiley Morning Show for a while was featured on there as well. When you look at Revolt TV and The Breakfast Club, that's another great example. You see a bank of microphones, a round table, and everybody's on there. DJ Envy, Charlamagne the God, Angela Yee, but now she has gone on to her own program. And then Joe Rogan has the other set that everybody uses, the face-to-face model. And that's really the kind of choices that you have now if you're doing a video setup. If you want to get a setup for the show, everybody's doing that in some way, shape, or form. Then we get the other round table where it's like a mix of the Joe Rogan set and the Breakfast Club, where you get a big round table, a U shape of various people on microphones. And I don't want to bring up a lot of names that will remind you of this, but listen, I'm sure some of you might have run across the Fresh and Fit podcast, whether you like it or not, but that's a format they use. And I'm just talking about the format. I'm not talking about the presentation. I'm not talking about the content. And if you think I'm going to talk about the content on this program, if it's brought up in the stories, then I will bring it up. But for me, I'm not concerned so much about the content, because the content, no matter how triggering or how it makes you feel once you hear words, okay, I understand that part, and people can be entitled to their opinions. I'm not here to go ahead and talk anymore about when it comes to, we're free speech. Listen, free speech is how it is now. It doesn't matter. There are some people that, these social media are the bears. They can be the watchdogs, and they allow people, because of the social media minions out there, that are able to get together in droves and are able to go and push somebody out of favor, out of the public eye of the internet, where they're then sent to go ahead and go into some other outer fringes. They're like the rebellion being pushed away from the Death Star, right? Something like that. So there are the major social media platforms. Then there are the secondary tier, which is where those that are being excommunicated from the major portals like a YouTube or a Twitch, they go on to a Rumble or a Cozy.tv that PewDiePie's on, or, whatever. Everybody has their own things. As we know, then the political censors, obviously, a number of different platforms out there that are trying to compete with Twitter, or trying to compete with Facebook, or trying to compete with YouTube. It is what it is. But I'm not worried about that. That's not the part that I concern myself with at all on this program, and I'm not going to. So let's go into the Fred Jacobs article. They mentioned that at Podcast Movement in Dallas, video podcasts, especially on YouTube, was almost as hot a topic as the surprise appearance by a political figure, Ben Shapiro, the Daily Wire. That's another story in its own, where people were motivated to not see him appear at this event, and Podcast Movement having to go out of their way to apologize for said person appearing at the event. This is where, when organizations like Podcast Movement, you made the choice to bring somebody on board. And it doesn't look good when you decide to go ahead and program a show and you're not putting out cards subject to change. Like, it wasn't because somebody was sick or unable to go or something of that nature. It's because you had somebody that you brought on that was going to be a firebrand, that was going to cause controversy. You thought that would help to sell tickets. And then your base decided to crap on you for doing that. And now, because of that, you decided to go ahead and basically have to apologize, be apologists for yourselves for being a little greedy. Well, that's what you get. And the fact of the matter is, what is it? Cumulus Media now will no longer be exhibiting at your shows. I think you're just losing business. I mean, look, if you want to go ahead and do that and you think somebody else's money is greener than theirs, then that's your call, but that's not a good look. And, the king of podcasts here, like I said, well, you're just proving to me that if that's the case, if that's how you want to handle things, not because of the particular person you're talking about, because I don't necessarily, care or really would have cared to go see him at the event. Okay. But the thing was, it's the principle. Now, back to the point from Podcast Movement, because they did bring up a good point at our event. A recent story on Inside Radio referred to the new phase as an opportunity to court podcast watchers. And there were a number of experts who welcomed the video enhancement. One is Chris Colbert, CEO of DCUP Entertainment, that his company is making TikTok and YouTube a really big part of our strategy to lead generate people back to our audio podcast. And some producers use video on social media to drive ears back to their audio podcast because that's where the money is. And by the way, if anybody wants to go and recommend somebody that can do clips for YouTube or to social media for me of my podcasts, please reach out to me. Use the contact form on the bottom of the page, broadcasterspodcast.com, or just email me at kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com. I'd really appreciate that. I'll put that plug out there. Now, there are another couple of production facilities that are out here also talking about this. One, the Edison Data has actually come out in their State of Ear panel that in the second quarter of this year, nearly 3/4 of podcast listeners now actively watch a podcast while listening to it. Fred Jacobs had their tech survey that posed the question about video podcasts, and they learned that interest in and consumption of video versus a favorite podcast among those who listen to podcasts monthly or more often. Now, I'll tell you what, there are a couple of shows that I've decided not to listen to anymore that I'd rather watch. This is where YouTube is becoming much more of the play when it comes to podcasting. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. So there's a thing about that. And in the tech survey for Fred Jacobs or Jacobs Media, they actually mentioned there's a market for video podcasts based on those who currently watch. And when they asked, how interested are you in watching a video version of YouTube of your favorite podcast you listen to now? While 55% said they don't watch now or not at all interested, 25% are somewhat interested, but they don't watch now. 3% are very interested, but don't watch now. 6% occasionally watch. 2% frequently watch. So if you put that right there, that's something, 37% that are actually more engaged than before. So more than 1/3 watch video podcasts now, or at least are interested in doing so. And he goes on to say that video versions, even those that simply mix in stills and screen caps, are more expensive and time consuming to produce. And it will impact the little guys and gals recording their podcasts in their garages, basements, and spare bedrooms. Cranking out episodes will require more time when content is produced on both audio and video formats. And that's one of the things I deal with, which is why I haven't done more video content. I try to experiment on my Depraved and Debaucherous series, which is a series I do 3 days a week. I do a half-hour-long show on Tuesday nights going into Wednesday, and I do too many episodes of which I record in bulk, and then I put them out as mini episodes. And sometimes I will record those with me in a quarter screen where you'll see me with a green screen behind. I'll have a studio backdrop with a little bit of graphics just to see if it would make a difference at all. And I don't see much of a difference right now anyway, but I will say this. I did some things recently to a few of my websites that I have. One is the wrestling website and the Depraved and Debaucherous website, to see if it made any difference on the amount of people that are listening to the show. And what I did was, on those pages, they're basically one-page websites, which with links to everywhere else I want to go. It's only a one-page website. I use it on Blogger. Listen, I'm not spending a lot of money on it. I'm not using WordPress for these particular shows. They're basically just blogs to kind of hold everything that you need about the show in one place. And when I promote the shows now on social media, I'm going to just plug the website as opposed to plugging the links. Figured it's just much easier that way. So people could just go right to the website and they'll find everything there. The video and audio portions. The YouTube channel I have embedded as a playlist. So if you want to go and watch the first episode, it auto plays, but muted. And then I have the other episodes that will just play across. Of course, it's a gimmick to try to get more listening hours and more subscribers, hopefully, and all that good stuff on the show. And so I did that for both of those sites. And with the one YouTube page, you'll see me on camera with the story, so it gives a visual component. Maybe it's something that'll work. I don't know. So I do that to see if it'll do anything. And then I have the audio portion down on the lower part of the page. And then links to subscribe if you want to do that too. I don't know. I'm trying something out. See if it'll do any difference. In the meantime, the biggest podcast companies and production houses are going to try to go ahead and try to do some of this, but it's also going to add expenses for them. And there could be speed bumps with podcast hosts, not of all whom will seamlessly make the adjustment to video. It could turn out to be weirdly reminiscent of the way that many silent film stars couldn't smoothly transition to movies with audio. So how will this translate to podcast downloads, content consumption, sales, profits remains to be seen. But at least most podcasters recognize the video opportunity, and many seem to be moving aggressively to seize it. Give them credit, they're not married to tradition. After all, the medium is relatively nascent, and there's still a lot to be learned, and many podcasts are embracing video. Now, there's more to this I can bring up to it, but I'll keep it right there because I want to move along into the subject. The people that are really driving the need to go to video, if you're a podcaster or if you're a radio professional that is using podcasting, everybody's getting used to the fact that, well, we need a studio and we need talking heads. Because now people are not just doing the Zoom calls. Like if you're going to do a proper video podcast, you have to have the set. You have to have something that's going to be visual that people will watch. Because people are used to watching talk shows or watching late night talk shows, and it's just like a simple set. So people can do that. It's the same idea. Like if you watch, Drew Barrymore or Kelly Clarkson in daytime, or you're watching like a James Corden or a Jimmy Fallon, I don't know who does, or a Stephen Colbert, and you're watching the way their sets are, the old school Johnny Carson set, or Jay Leno set if you're a little bit older, a little bit younger, excuse me. So these are the ideas that come up, and it's not a bad idea. It's what they're trying to do to help build something more for everybody out there to enjoy. Now, of the names that I have here, they all more or less do a pretty good job of producing content that's of high quality that people will get involved and watch on a regular basis. So now I want to go ahead and go through the names, like I said, that I want to go and bring up here that are significant for what's going on. For all these YouTubers, or all these people that are mostly on YouTube, they all basically have one main channel and then a secondary channel. So one guy is JJ Olatunji, who's best known as KSI. And he's quite a popular artist, especially in the UK. He has gotten a lot of music out there. He's got almost 16 million subscribers on YouTube on his secondary channel, which came out first. And then his KSI channel, which has 24 million subscribers. And he puts out a lot of content. Next is Logan Paul. And Logan Paul has 23.6 million subscribers. And I forget if he has... And then there's also his show Impulsive, which that show itself has 4.2 million subscribers. And that's not counting his brother Jake, right? There's that part. And then you have Joe Rogan, who did have a show before. Well, he has his main channel, which is Powerful JRE, which has 13 million subscribers. But then also his shows are all on Spotify now. And if you want to find everything else, you have his Clips channel, which that has 13 million subscribers as well. And then the other person that's the most recent name is Andrew Tate, who had over 760,000 subscribers, 4.7 million followers to his Instagram. But what really stood out and why he was so important is because right now, the fact he got canceled and banned on every platform possible. Like, what is it about him that made him such a target for a lot of people on social media to get him taken off? And then all these particular names that I just brought up, they're all talking about him. When his numbers are inferior to theirs, why is it that he's talking about them? Why are they talking about him all of a sudden? It's the question I want to ask. Now, I will say I understand the gimmick that was done, the multi-level marketing scheme that was done, which many other content creators are using right now, where Andrew Tate had his own subscription service for Hustlers University, and he had a lot of followers. And he was able to persuade those followers to go ahead and pull clips of his content and get those clips viral across TikTok or wherever other platforms. And by doing that, he was able to go ahead and get a lot more people talking about him. The truth is that because of the fact that if there are some people that are able to go ahead and take those clips, there are always going to be clips that you take of a show. If you're worried about the context that you have, like that's one thing you, as a podcaster or as a host, you always need to be watching your words and realize that people can absolutely clip up your show, clip up anything you're saying. And if there's no proper context, they can get you. Like, it's kind of funny where, like, when I do my shows, I have very long-winded diatribes. Like, my content, when I do these shows, it's not meant to be consumed in 30 to 60 seconds in clips and sound bites. I don't do it that much. Because if you're going to get me on a sound bite, you're going to get a full-throated response from me. You're not going to get something that's going to be so small unless you just make it, and that makes no sense at all. And it's not a complete thought. But a complete thought for me is going to take a little bit. Because that's the way I was trained. The way I learned on radio is because you keep people engaged for a long time. And for those that don't know how to do radio, or they don't understand where podcasting is supposed to be about how you do things to keep a long retention, that's the mistake that some podcasters make. That they feel like, okay, well, when they're doing a show, the fact they're going to do a 3-hour show or more. Like, I mean, it's hard for me to go ahead and sit through. I mean, first of all, with Joe Rogan, I can't listen to a 3-hour show of his. And for people that are able to do that, good on you. I only think that people can do that if they are passively listening to the program while having it on in the background and they're doing something else. So that means they're kind of engaged, but not engaged. It's like when I watch wrestling on Monday nights. You know, Monday Night Raw is one of WWE's flagship programs. It's a 3-hour show. But then what happens is when you're watching that show, the deal is that I mean, the show's on for 3 hours and you got commercials and all this other stuff. I don't know anybody that's just sitting down the entire 3 hours intently watching every little segment that's going on. Like me, I get up, I use the restroom, I might go grab a snack, I might grab a drink, whatever. And I'm not honestly watching the whole show. And these days, we know that people have been second screen viewing for a while now. Like that's been a thing going on for 10 years, where when social media just became such a thing and you have your phone or your tablets now to watch, we're already just normalized for someone to go and watch something on TV and they're still on their phones. And they're all flipping through and saying, hey, you know what? I'm watching TikTok, I'm watching YouTubes, I'm watching whatever. And that's the audience that these streamers, these YouTubers, these content creators are subscribing to. Meanwhile, to get attraction to their content, people will do just like what Andrew Tate or what you'll see with Joe Rogan clips, or you'll see with Logan Paul clips, or you'll see with KSI clips. They will go ahead and get clipped up by their fans or by other people that are just utilizing their content because there's no copyright to it. People can repurpose the content all they want because it's out there and there's no rules behind it. Nobody's asking for a copyright. Nobody's asking for anything for it. It's out there in the public. The idea is that the clips might go out there and it might be there, which is for promotional purposes for the most part. But then some people might just take that out there and just say, oh, you know what? You have some people that are not professionals at pulling proper clips of a show. Like they're not journalists. They're not anywhere to a point where they know what they're doing when it comes to that. Of course not. But people are doing it. And it's because of this aspect of how content creation is done with these video style podcasts that makes it like that. And for some people, they're doing podcasting like they don't realize they are. When there are people that are streaming on a regular basis, you know, I think of various people that are in political ends at all the time, right? Was there H3, Hassan Piker? You can think of like people like the Young Turks. If you go to the other side, there's various people out there, you know, that do the same kind of thing. And like I said, there's just names out there that I don't want to bring up because I know it's going to really just stir up some shit. And it's not for me because I'm not trying to bring up people that are going to be so, not the word divisive, I guess, but just some people are going to just find it's almost like a bad word to say certain people's names. I don't know, but that's where some people are. And I'm trying to do the best to toe the line here and not try to go ahead and, you know, support one side or the other, but try to make the discussion possible. That's the point. Okay. So let's get into the person now that is the subject by a lot of people. And for all the news stories I'm going to talk about tonight, about Andrew Tate, which is the person that people talked about the most and were the most, it been the most controversial of names now. He's the name at the moment. I decided to go to several collegiate websites, collegiate newspapers that decided to talk about this because at least they're a little more in touch as opposed to your established mainstream outlets. I decided I'm going to go to the collegiates, to the young people that are up and coming, aspiring journalists that hopefully they're taking the right route and just reporting on things, which is what they're being taught in school. So first of all, the news at Northeastern University, I'll start with his here. A Northeastern expert says that now banned by TikTok and others, Andrew Tate rode the wave of online misogyny. And so one teacher on Reddit mentions that, quote, I hear some nonsense about women cheating more than men, and the young man cited Dr. Tate. Another person writes, the rise of Andrew Tate is ruining my freshman boys. They're addicted to his content. Just this week, I had to have 6 conversations with families about their sons, saying shit like women are inferior to men and women belong in the kitchen, Ms. Blank. Andrew Tate, the report here, is a British-American social media influencer well known for making misogynistic comments in his videos, which have been removed from TikTok, but at one point had billions of views. In his videos, Tate referred to women as property, described how he would attack a woman who would accuse him of cheating, and said he doesn't believe that depression is real, and Tate has said that those comments have been taken out of context. Now, what I will say is, to correct this here, maybe his channel on TikTok was removed, but you can see plenty of clips of Andrew Tate now on TikTok. They're just unavoidable. They're coming across my FYP all the time. And then anybody that's similar when it comes to dating, because I'm always looking at dating, relationships, and success and entrepreneurship stuff. So it's no doubt his stuff's going to pop in my feed all the time, along with everything else. And I'm a guy, so like it fits to my demographic. And this story is from August 30th, but I'm going to bring up here that, so the week before that, the third week of August, he was banned from YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook, but experts say that Tate is not acting in a silo. In fact, online misogyny has been on the rise for years, and social media platforms are not built to handle it. And the rhetoric is part of a trend. Margot Lindauer is director of Northeastern Law's Domestic Violence Clinic. And she says that misogyny has been growing online over the past decade, but especially in the last 6 years, the Me Too movement, which gained prominence in 2017, may have something to do with this. Quote, a lot of women gained the confidence to speak about their truth and assert their own power, and I think a lot of cisgender men felt very invulnerable. And that economic security, according to another professor at Northeastern's College of Arts, Media and Design, Brooke Foucault-Wells, says that economic security may be a factor that also draws some men to influencers like Tate. Quote, if men are meant to believe that their value in society is being providers, then you enter a time of real economic distress, which I think we're in right now, then men start feeling like they're losing their value. I'm going to move along down to the story here. The fact that Tate's message was able to spread on social media like it did, platforms like TikTok are the perfect place for it to thrive due to their part in their origins. And Wells says, quote, we know that communication media of all kinds, but particularly online media, like social media platforms, are predominantly designed by and for men. That's what their reason is, what they're saying that's happening. And they mentioned that with Meta's board of directors, the Facebook parent company, 4 of the 9 members are women, only 2 out of the 8 members of the management team are women. And just over a third of all employees were women in 2021. Meanwhile, women make up over just a quarter of the workforce. You know, it's interesting about the social media companies that's how that makeup is. But when I worked in digital marketing, I must say it was much more equalized. Like when I talk about people that are in SEO and marketing, blogging, social media, and in terms of the companies that are servicing these social media companies or providing services to feature your content on social media, I know plenty of women, especially when I worked on my stuff with WMR.fm. Plenty of women. Even in the cannabis industry, there's plenty of women in the industry, but they're talking about management positions. I don't know. There's still a lot of females that are working in all these companies as well that must have some kind of input. It can't just be management that's making the choice of how the algorithms are being run. There has to be the engineers that are in there. I don't know. But they say here, quote, I don't think that many people at these organizations set out to create toxic, misogynistic places. Still, the absence of diversity at every level of an organization makes it more likely that there will be oversights when it comes to protecting vulnerable users. The Guardian investigation, or The Guardian actually did an investigation recently saying that TikTok's algorithm may make it more likely for young men to see misogynistic posts. Interaction with the post makes it likely that it will more likely appear in the future. And so there's more to this that I'm not going to bring up as part, because like I said, they're going more into the misogynistic aspect and more of his content, which is what I'm not focusing on. It's more about what he's able to do and where things are going on. Now, Lindauer went along and said later in the article that, quote, social media platforms do not consistently take responsibility for content, despite the fact that feeds are heavily customized. Quote, are these sites just platforms like they argue, or are they more responsible for the information they're sharing? If screening content worked more like copywriting, this would go a long way. Copyright protection is generally very fast and efficient. It doesn't take long for me to be taken down, but for misogynistic content, it's just not a priority in the same kind of way. So I brought up the point about this content that goes out there, whatever it is that's being clipped up. There's no copyrights to it. So they're trying to say there needs to be some kind of copyright or some kind of way to deem content worthy of being taken down. So like, for instance, if I'm using copyrighted music, my videos will go down. That's what happens sometimes with these videos, because I would have an intro to the show that was copyrighted music, but I was trying to use the instrumental. But for whatever reason, that rule normally used to mean that I can go ahead and use the music And quite a few times I never got any kind of an issue where the video would be deleted or banned. But for whatever reason that was going on, that's why I've stuck to a generic intro ever since. It is what it is. So there's one story on this. And then what happens is more of the same. I'm going to take from Tulane University's Tulane Hullabaloo that also wrote about Andrew Tate, but more about the censorship conundrum. And Carly Barovic writes about this. In the story, she says that mounting pressure on social media platforms to take action culminated in the ban of Tate from Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube in late August. And a TikTok representative told the Washington Post that Tate was banned for violating community guidelines, citing policies that, quote, against content that attacks, threatens, incites violence against, or otherwise dehumanizes an individual or a group. And in an interview with Lad Bible following a social media embargo, Tate claimed he was, quote, playing a comedic character, that all of his posts were Bible verses and charitable donations, and asked for social media platforms to give him his accounts back. Okay. Social media influencer Jake Paul released Tate's final matches and said while he does not support Tate's views, he supports freedom of speech. And then there's other people that have talked and said, okay, one is the Charlotte Observer's Evan Santiago outlining the nuances of the First Amendment in regards to Andrew Tate's censorship. Protecting the freedom of speech as it pertains to government-sanctioned censorship, social media platforms are private companies that require users, and they agree to their terms of service before creating an account. Yeah. So the whole thing is with social media, I mean, this was the whole net neutrality debate comes into play, where the social media need to be regulated, and thus they'll be prone to free speech, which is why some people are hoping that net neutrality would happen someday. But for the meantime, social media is their own, and they can control the town squares that they hold. And that's what goes on. But then some people can go ahead and be banned from all these major platforms and find themselves on existing other platforms and grow those audiences from there. So that's what's going on. But it doesn't mean that people will still not find a way to catch his content in some way. They're just going to have to follow him to watch his long form content, but the clips are going to still keep popping up on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram because you're not going to avoid it. There's just too much to police because there's too many people out there that you can't control what happens. And another story came up from the CastletonSpartan.com. Another story that Andrew Tate's being brought up. One person, an anonymous comment that was posted on Yik Yak and Castleton, made a point about the whole story, saying, quote, it's funny seeing how easily he trolled millions of softies just by throwing emphasis and emotion into some of his statements, which are valid, most of the time just exaggerated and misunderstood. Another person said the persona was a publicity tactic. Quote, I think the stuff he says is absolutely outrageous, but I think he knows what he's doing, and he's doing it for all the publicity, and is trying to grow his business and his image, whether it's good or bad. Another person wrote, hate him or love him, Andrew Tate's social media being taken down as the most anti-democratic thing that is trending right now. They violate his freedom of speech. Well, we know it's not that. I understand that. So there's that part. And as I said, we just talked about Jake Paul defending his freedom of speech. By the way, Jake Paul also got ripped apart for saying anything. The next person that actually tried to say something about this was Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan made comments on this, and here's what he said. He insists that Andrew Tate offered a good lesson to his followers before his social media ban when it came to his pro-male content. And Joe Rogan, in his latest episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, he says that he ultimately fucked up an excellent platform by putting out misogynistic content. And he said he wasn't surprised that Tate's messaging hit home with a younger audience, explaining that if Tate had eschewed the misogynistic stuff and continued with his pro-male and pro-accountability messaging, he likely wouldn't have lost his sizable platform. And he went on to say, quote, look, he plays the part of like a character, and part of his legit world champion kickboxer, who is a hard man who doesn't buy any pussy bullshit. And that's why that's what's resonating with young people. And Rogan was clear in stating that he did not agree with all Tate's points of view. He believed there's a place in the world for men like him. Quote, Toxic masculinity, what that means is, oh, you mean that the men carve the world. You do need them. You just don't think you need them because you don't need them right now. Now, Russia has them. China's making them more masculine. And so there's all that that's going on. A lot more to be said about it. And, you know, the harm that is being said, that's being done because of what he says, is the other part that is brought up. And CBC actually brought up this and told the story about how he reaches young men, and his harmful content is reaching them, according to the story. And the experts say that social media bans aren't always effective in removing problematic content. So in that part, Joanna Schroeder, a writer whose work focuses on gender and media representation, talks about that content like Andrew Tate's often starts in a way that seems relatively harmless, but then slowly becomes more nefarious. She says, for example, young boys often visit sites like YouTube, search for videos related to Minecraft, a wildly popular video game. But the YouTube algorithm will often guess their age and gender, and it might be pushing more harmful content at them. Well, listen, I wouldn't be surprised if social media platforms move people to watch other content. Remember, the algorithms are trying to keep the viewers more engaged. And if it means you're going to be watching something that might not be that'll be looked down upon more than anything else, but if that's going to engage the younger viewers, then they're going to do that because they want the advertisers to be seen. They're a business like anybody else. And so this is what they're bringing up about this here. Quote, there are people who want to target this demographic who start showing them content that becomes more and more racy. And since edgy content often presents himself as something a younger demographic should consider normal or even find funny, it slowly becomes problematic. And then in some cases where you're watching on TikTok, and this happens a lot, there will be videos that will feature clips of creators like Tate that will often share a screen showing video games like Minecraft or Call of Duty to try to keep teens engaged. At this point, she says that some social media algorithms notice the user's higher levels of engagement and then begin to serve them more overtly racist content. Quote, algorithms push content as often extreme. Extreme views, hate-filled views get a lot of traction on places like YouTube and TikTok. Well, she's saying it's hate, and that's okay. But I do agree with the part that the content that people are watching, the social media channels are trying to push whatever it takes to get people to stay engaged on their content. TikTok is doing a thing to where, remember, I've talked about stories on this program where TikTok gets more people viewing on a regular basis than you do television. And that's becoming a common thing. Remember that, especially during the pandemic, people were watching YouTube videos longer than they were watching television. That's just the honest truth. Now, TikTok is saying they're looking at ways to strengthen enforcement against this harmful type of content. And the TikTok spokesperson had said that misogyny is a hateful ideology that's not tolerated on TikTok, and it continues to investigate other accounts and videos that violate this policy. Well, they can keep trying to do it all they want. But there's content that's hateful and misinterpreted and not good for young people in general, okay? Across the board. But there is one thing to be said about where certain content is going to be banned while others might not. Just saying that kind of stuff happens. But I'm not here to judge on it. I just know that you're expecting social media, these private companies, do you think they're going to take more emphasis, more onus on controlling what content is being shown? Or controlling the content to make sure that whatever it takes to get the viewers or the users to continue to stay engaged on their platform for the sake of getting more ad dollars, they're going to do that. Sorry, money still matters. These private companies, they're in it to make money. Just the way it is. They're not being funded to the point where they can take losses. Because you know what? If they all chose to take the words of Ms. Schroeder right here and try to take down all different content, and you know what's going to happen? They're not going to make money. Because the idea of alienating a sector of your audience. Is that really good? What did alienating a sector of the audience do for other publications? Okay. For instance, look at the online blogs and things that are out there like a Vice or a Huffington Post and all these others from the past that have all gone and fallen apart. And they go by the wayside because they decided to go ahead and alienate a certain part of the audience out there that could have had. And that's my whole thing. I don't like the idea of being able to go and just say, oh, well, I'm going to go I only want certain people to listen to my show. No, I want everybody to listen to my show. But I'm also going to do the right thing and not try to go and put out content that's just going to go ahead and just irk people. We're doing a case study here, folks. So the fact that I brought up Andrew Tate's name a couple of times in the program, or Joe Rogan's name, or Jake and Logan Paul, or KSI, is because we're trying to make a point here. At least that's what I'm trying to do. KSI, who's a popular rapper and a YouTuber, has gone out there and has also had his own issues. But remember, the Bible does say, those that cast dispersions do not throw rocks through glass windows. Isn't that kind of like the idea of what the verses say? So, for instance, Andrew Tate was able to go and lash back out at KSI after he was banned on social media. This is from the sportsgirl.com. I don't know who runs this site, but I'm just going to make points here. They mentioned about Andrew Tate having supporters. One is a 23-year-old internet star, now 24 years old, and his name is Sneeko, stepping up to defend him, asserting his right to free expression. And opponents of the kickboxer have spoken out, including KSI, who sarcastically thanked God for removing Tate from social media, and things are starting to heat up between these two content creators, Sneeko and KSI. And this content creator brought up some things that came from KSI's past that were on video, saying, quote, "You've been canceled so many times for doing Heskey time, the rape face, making fun of sexual assault victims. It's what you were doing. Now you're celebrating the downfall of somebody else. You're just echoing what they're wanting you to echo because you're scared of getting canceled again, so you're siding with the elites. You're siding with the programming because you almost got your shit taken away." So there's that part that's going on as well. And then another person that also got into play that's gotten some comments is Sam Hyde, who has gone after YouTube creators and has definitely wanted to go ahead and say some things. So the post here, unheard.com, making a point of a right-wing comment they say Sam Hyde is, that is also, by the way, a lot of these people have been involved in boxing, if you notice, with Jake Paul, or combat sports in some way, shape, or form. So Andrew Tate's a former world champion kickboxer. Joe Rogan has been commentating UFC fights for years. And then what? Logan and Jake Paul, they're avid boxers. And Logan Paul has now a contract with World Wrestling Entertainment. He is now working as a professional wrestler. Various occasions he's coming out to work. And so there are YouTube vloggers, Twitch streamers, and other content creators getting more eyeballs to their work by fighting each other in high-profile creator clashes. And so when the controversy gets to be too much, and Andrew Tate might get offered the chance to go ahead and fight with one of these content creators if that's where they're going to go, which is just a publicity stuff for everybody else. And by the way, the kind of things that some of these people can do to make money, most recently, Sam Hyde decided to go ahead and call out left-wing streamer Hassan Piker, which he said he threatened to kill. As oft-criticized vloggers turned fighters, Jake and Logan Paul have already demonstrated controversy creates catch for people who can launch their own platform, and a Hyde versus Piker match would surely be a main event given Piker's enormous fan base. Hyde is resoundingly canceled as any creators of any generation would be right back in the mix firmly established. Right. So then you find ways to continue to get yourself back in the spotlight, back in the limelight again, which could very well happen with a number of people. And so who's on the right side of this? Who's on the wrong side of this? I don't know. But it's a fascinating thing what's going on. So I got two more stories I want to bring up before we wrap things up. One is from thedrum.com talking about social media and TikTok. And that TikTok is not social media. In fact, it marks the end of the social era. And Leroyson Figueira writes about this story. And they talk about how the fact is that what's challenging what the word social means signaling in the process, the end of the social media era. Now, TikTok has film publishers and a film audience. It's not at all like Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. It's more like a TV channel or Netflix on a social platform, but the most democratic channel in history. Anyone can publish a film on TikTok. Anyone can watch it. It's a filmic channel with unlimited commissioners, actors, directors, sound technicians, and artists, unlimited creators. With no government mandate, no corporate charter, no investor relations, TikTok publishers make films of whatever they want, whenever they want. There's nothing social about it. We don't read the comments on TikTok to see what people think. We don't care about the number of likes, as long as we find it immediately entertaining, and that can be pretty niche. Nobody sees what we're watching. We don't share our top films. We don't let our friends or family know what we're watching because entertainment choices are personal. My humor is not your humor. TikTok is intimate and ours. So there's that part that's being said where TikTok is changing the game. Because really, so much that changes with music, so much what changes with commentary, culture, so many different things immediately gets dropped into TikTok. And I'll tell you, sometimes it comes out faster than it does Twitter or other places. Like, it's amazing. For instance, to learn about Queen Elizabeth's passing earlier today, I didn't watch it on any network service. I had somebody that I follow on a social media platform that brought it out and broke the news. Just like that. Isn't that incredible? And I'll take one other story from YouTube, this will be from Guardian, talking about how YouTube is transforming podcasts. And this is where I think it's very important. We need to bring this point across. Video podcasts are booming, giving creators access to new audiences, but it's a risk ruining what made the audio format so satisfying. And as I said, I could have brought this story up at the beginning, but I didn't. They went to a lot of different things about what they're talking about here. Spotify has invested about $1 billion in podcasting in recent years. Gen Z's beloved short-form video platform TikTok is thinking about launching a music service that would cover podcasts. And much of the tendency of distantly related crustaceans to keep evolving into crabs, sooner or later platforms have a tendency to start cannibalizing each other's core features. This time a medium is caught in the crossfire, raising the question of what differentiates a video podcast from the vlogs that YouTube first popularized, which is exactly what's happening here. Because the YouTube vlogs, that's exactly what a Logan and Jake Paul were doing, what a KSI was doing. Kind of like that idea. But Hassan Piker that was brought up is doing. Same idea. Those are podcasts. No matter how you put it, they are podcasts. Video podcasting can open up a new horizon for creators. And the medium allows them to see real emotions come out as taken through a story that somebody has spent countless hours preparing. And video gives another layer to play with, throwing visuals on screen to support whatever is being said. There's so much there about it. It's not just YouTube. TikTok's bite-sized content is encouraging a trend for video podcasts. So there's one featured content creator to talk about that's planning to focus on sharing clips on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts. A medium typified by the languid pace of Joe Rogan's 3 hours interviews is going to get a lot snappier. Among industry players, the Spotify versus YouTube rivalry is hailed as another sign that podcasting is the hottest thing in media. But some worry that a pivot to video might mean sacrificing the soul of the industry. I don't believe that. I think it's just another component. Look, what's happening now with podcasting, and this is something that my company's been worrying about for a while now, is you just can't put out audio content. Sometimes to lure the audience, you need to have it in subtitle. You need to have it in an ebook format. Sometimes you need to put it out there as a clip, and that might be just enough to get somebody involved and engaged to listen to it. That's what's going on right now. It's a very interesting case study, like I said, of where things are going with video podcasting now, and the people that are behind it that are making such wave, good or bad. Just saying. This is one other story I'm going to bring up right now because I have a chance to go and talk about it. The future of radio still being caught up for the fact that we have so much going on when it comes to all the work that we're doing. and watching on a regular basis. And there was a story I was going to talk about. Zach saying the Ryan Seacrest of the youth wants to save radio, and how he's using Amazon's new app, AMP, to try to make something out of it. I want to use this platform so bad, and I was going to talk about this story, but of course, the paywall from New York Times decides to get up there, what they always do, right? I don't know when it's going to be in the Google Play Store, though. But we talked about this back in March, and at the moment, we still don't have it yet. So I have to wait for it, and hopefully it'll come up someday soon, so I'll be able to have the chance to try it out myself. But of course, if you get your iPhone 14 soon enough, you can probably use that, and you can be on the radio yourself. That's just how it works. I'll take one other story I still had on my list here about the graying of radio, because radio continues to get an older audience, an older demographic. And Fred Jacobs brought this up recently in one of his recent points. An industry that once regularly featured jazz, classical, oldies, and AAA stations in many markets now eschews them in favor of more than 25 to 54-year-old friendly outlets that having stations that simply duplicate others in the market. Like in my market right now in West Palm Beach, Florida, we have 3 adult contemporary stations that basically sound the same with some various changes, but they're all going after the same market. Women 25-54. And they're all up there. Might be in the top 3, sure, but that's all they're doing. Splitting up the bulk of the audience. And they talk about a look at broadcast radio's trend line indicates an audience is in fact aging at a rapid rate. Now, Fred Jacobs has their tech survey 2022 about public radio that was presented. And they mentioned now how the audience is getting to a point. Year to year, the average age of the national public radio audience gets older. The average age now of someone that listens to national public radio is 64.3 years old. 4 years ago was 61.8 years old. Oops. So in the current list they have right now, no one 18 to 24 for the most part, just scraps. 3% are 25 to 34, 6% 35 to 44, 11% 45 to 54. Ouch. That's not good. Like, I look at that for my own content, and that scares me. Like, I look at what my own content does, and I'm like, I don't want that to happen to me. Like, I would hope that my programming does not go that kind of audience. That would scare me if it was the case. Like, right now, if I look at the last 90 days of my program, and I look at the stats for it, I can look at through Spotify just as a sample. And I can see that the audience I have right now, first of all, of the last 90 days, 74% of my audience is male, 22% female, 4% non-binary, by the way. So that makes about sense. 3/4 men, 1/4 women. That makes about sense to me. My audience. So 44% are 45 to 59. 35 to 44 is 22%. 19%, 28 to 34. So between 28 to 60 years old, that encompasses what? 85% of my audience. And I have a 7% audience that's 18 to 22. So I get people listening, which is good. Hey, that tells me something. That's one program. Among my other programming, let me think, my Depraved and Debaucherous series, which I'm very proud of. That's a different story. And I would hope that programming would be towards a younger audience, which it is. Like in that show, 70% male, 28% female, a little bit better. 1% non-binary. And then my audience on this program is somewhat younger. All right. The bulk of my audience is 28 to 34, 35%. This is for Depraved and Debaucherous, by the way. 16% are 23 to 27 or 35 to 44. And so if I put that right together, that's what? 67% of my audience. So 2/3 of my audience is between 23 and 45. That's pretty good. 23% are 45 to 59. 5% are over 60. And 3% are 18 to 22. And I have 2% of the audience, 0 to 17. How about that? And for that matter, of the 0 to 17, the 2% are female. Of the 18 to 22, 40% are female, 60% male. Of my 23 to 27-year-old audience, 29% female, 70% male, and 75-25 for the 28 to 34-year-olds. How about that? I'm fascinated. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that lovely? That's the show this week, folks. I got through all my content. And I hope none of you were majorly offended, but you know what? I would love to let you have your comments be made. Look, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to make comments, subscribe, like, and share. If you want to hear more content like this, if you want to hear less content like this, I want to hear from you. Feel free to go ahead and reach out. In the meantime, we're going to leave it there. Thanks for listening to another Broadcasters Podcast. Remember, until next week, content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.